Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real-life experiences that touch the heart and make us think. Today, we're diving into a powerful journey of standing up for oneself in the face of family expectations, humiliation, and the search for personal freedom. A woman, tired of being the disappointment in her father's eyes, makes a bold decision at his birthday party that changes everything. Will she continue to tolerate the role they've forced on her? Or will she break free once and for all? Subscribe now to begin today's story. My name is Sarah, and I've always been the kind of person who walks to the beat of her own drum. I don't follow the rules. I don't obey the expectations placed on me. And that's what's made me, in the eyes of my father, Robert, his biggest disappointment. It wasn't because I ended up in trouble with the law or became a failure in life, but because I didn't live according to his plan. I didn't fit the mold he wanted me to. I was 32 when I finally decided I couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't a sudden decision. It had been building for years. The tension had slowly crept into our relationship after my parents divorced when I was only 10 years old. It wasn't a messy divorce. Not by outward appearances at least. But the impact it had on me was deep. My dad remarried quickly, within a year of the separation, to Carla, a woman with 2 children from her previous marriage, Jake and Lily. That's when everything changed. At first, I tried. I was just a child. And I wanted my dad to be happy. Carla seemed nice at first, sweet even. In that fake, overly eager way that you sometimes encounter. She would hug me a little too tightly and say things like, "I just know we're going to be the best of friends." She smiled like she was the picture of warmth and acceptance. But, behind closed doors, the truth was something else entirely. She only had one priority, her own children. And, as time passed, it became clear that my dad had shifted his attention away from me to focus on his new family. At first, it wasn't so noticeable. Little things like him missing my soccer games but never forgetting to attend Jake's football matches. Forgetting to pick me up from school. But always on time for Lily's dance recitals. Those things hurt, but they weren't the worst of it. No, it wasn't until I turned 14 that it became undeniable. By then, I was expected to babysit them, do chores they never had to, and be the good big sister. While they got away with everything, it was frustrating, and if I ever complained, Dad would sigh like I was exhausting him, telling me to be more mature, to understand that they needed more attention. And then there was Carla. She had no qualms about calling me selfish. It wasn't long before I realized that I wasn't just the other child. I wasn't even part of the family anymore. I was the burden. The final straw came when Dad drained the savings account my mom had set up for me. That money was meant to cover my college tuition. I was furious. My mom fought hard in court to get it back. But by then, it didn't matter. I barely spoke to Dad during my last year of high school. And when I left for college, I paid for it all on my own. I didn't come home often, only for the occasional holiday. And even those visits were increasingly strained. Years passed, and things never really improved between my father and me. He still invited me to family events. But I could feel the underlying obligation behind it. It wasn't genuine. To him and Carla, I was just the difficult daughter, the one who wouldn't fall in line. Hunter and Lily, on the other hand, they were the golden children. The perfect ones. It had become a habit. They would call me to their events, expecting me to join in. But I always felt out of place. A token of the family. Perhaps, but not someone they genuinely wanted to spend time with. Every family event, every dinner, every occasion, nothing had changed. I felt like an outsider in my own bloodline. Then came Dad's birthday party. Carla had planned an extravagant celebration. One of those over-the-top affairs where she invited everyone from the neighbors to distant relatives. I hadn't planned on going. Why would I? But then my aunt, one of the few family members who still understood me, convinced me to stop by for a little while. She said things might have changed. I didn't believe it for a second. The moment I stepped into the party, I knew things hadn't changed. The familiar tension hit me right away. People I hadn't seen in years were there. But instead of warm greetings, I received polite nods. Conversations swirled around me, but no one made an effort to include me. I felt invisible. And there he was, my dad, laughing across the room with some old friends. But the moment his eyes landed on me, his smile flickered for just a fraction of a second. I could see the surprise in his eyes. As if he hadn't expected me to show up at all. I couldn't help but feel the sting. But it wasn't enough to make me leave. Not yet. As I wandered through the crowd, I noticed a small table near the entrance, with name tags placed carefully in front of each chair. Carla had done this at past events, insisting that it helped people mingle. Most of the tags were harmless enough. Uncle Mark, Cousin Rachel, Neighbor Tom. But when I saw my name tag, my stomach dropped. It didn't just say my name. It said something else. Something that cut deeper than I expected. Underneath my name, in small letters, someone had written, "The Disappointment." I froze. For a moment, I thought it might be some kind of tasteless joke. Maybe one of the cousins was being funny. But then I heard the unmistakable laugh from across the room. Carla. I looked up, and there she was, standing near the bar, sipping her wine with an amused little smirk on her face. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't a joke. This was deliberate. She had done this. And suddenly, all the years of frustration, of hurt, of being pushed aside, all of it came rushing back in a flash. I wasn't the daughter she had ever wanted. I was the problem, the burden, the disappointment. And for a split second, I considered walking out, just leaving. But then something inside me shifted. Something fierce. Something that said, "Not this time." I stood there, gripping the name tag, my fingers trembling slightly. The heat was rising in my chest. A mixture of anger and disbelief. For a moment, everything around me faded as I focused solely on the absurdity of the situation. Carla was watching me from across the room, a glass of wine in her hand and a satisfied smirk on her face. It was as though she knew exactly what she had done and was waiting for me to react. And then, I realized, that's exactly what she wanted. She wanted me to lose my composure. To get upset. To make a scene. She was testing me, seeing how far she could push before I broke. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. Not this time. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. It wasn't the first time she'd humiliated me. And it wouldn't be the last. But it was the last time I was going to let her get away with it. I turned the name tag over and placed it back down on the table, smoothing it out as though it was nothing. I stared at it for a moment, almost in disbelief at the casual cruelty that had been so carefully orchestrated. Just then, my aunt appeared at my side. She had always been the one person in the family who understood me, who knew what I was going through and never judged me for it. Her face was drawn with concern as she glanced at the name tag. Her lips pressed tightly together in a way that told me she had already seen what Carla had done. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice filled with genuine concern. I forced a tight smile. But inside, I was anything but okay. I was exhausted. Exhausted from the years of trying to be something I wasn't. Exhausted from constantly being pushed aside in favor of everyone else. "I'm fine," I said, my voice a little too calm. A little too steady. But I wasn't fine. I was anything but fine. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of expectations that I could never meet. Every time I thought I might be free, every time I tried to live on my own terms, there was something, someone, dragging me back, reminding me of my place in their world. A world where I would never be good enough. But not anymore. I stood up straight, took another deep breath, and made a decision. I wasn't going to let Carla or anyone else control this moment. If she wanted a show, then I would give her one. I glanced around the room, catching the eyes of a few people who had started to notice me standing there. They were watching, waiting for me to react. But instead, I smiled, a real smile, the kind that didn't hide the bitterness I felt, but one that was filled with the kind of calm resolve that comes with knowing you're done being pushed around. A server passed by, offering champagne, and I took a glass from him. I didn't say a word, just raised it slightly, the quiet clink of the glass making enough noise to draw attention. I let it linger for a moment, giving Carla a chance to notice. Sure enough, her eyes flicked toward me, narrowing slightly as she took a sip of her wine. I could see her trying to figure out what I was doing, trying to predict my next move. And that's when I decided to speak. I'd like to make a toast, I said, my voice clear and steady, drawing more attention from the guests. The room started to quiet down, the murmurs of conversation slowly dying out. People were watching me now, waiting to see what would happen next. I raised my glass just a little higher, the weight of the room shifting. I didn't care about the polite smiles or the forced pleasantries anymore. This wasn't about playing by their rules. It wasn't about being the good daughter, the one they expected me to be. Here's to family, I said, and my father's eyes flickered toward me from across the room. His expression was careful, neutral, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. I knew he hated moments like this, when things weren't perfect, when things weren't under his control. I continued, to family who builds each other up, who celebrates one another's successes, who supports each other through thick and thin. I paused for a beat, letting the silence settle over the room. Carla's eyes were locked on me now, her fingers curling tighter around her glass. But then I let the weight of my next words hit, and then. There's the kind of family where loyalty only exists as long as you fit into the version of yourself they want you to be. I could feel my dad stiffen beside me. The tension was palpable. People around me shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other as though unsure how to react. My father, always the picture of control, seemed to struggle with his own words. But it was too late. Because when you step outside that version, they show you how they really feel. The silence in the room was thick, oppressive. It was the kind of silence that comes before something big happens. The kind where everyone knows that what is being said is more than just words. It's a truth that can't be ignored. And in that moment, I realized that this was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment I would stand up for myself. For the woman I had become. For the life I had built outside of their expectations. I wasn't going to be their disappointment anymore. Not today. Not ever again. The room was completely silent now. Every single person frozen in place. My words hung in the air, thick with unspoken truth. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me. But it was my father's gaze that pinned me in place. For the first time in years. He wasn't looking through me. He was looking at me. I had his attention, but I could see the discomfort on his face. The way his grip on his drink tightened as though he wanted to reach out and stop me. But he didn't. He couldn't. Carla, on the other hand, was still trying to maintain control. Her forced smile tight against her face. Her eyes darting nervously between me and my father. She was trying to play it off. Trying to maintain the illusion that she was in charge. But I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. You always told me that family is supposed to build each other up. I continued, my voice steady and unshaken. I glanced over at my father, watching the way his throat moved as he swallowed. His expression carefully neutral but clearly uncomfortable. That we should support each other. Celebrate each other's successes. I paused for a moment, letting the weight of the words sink in. I used to believe that. I really did. The crowd shifted slightly, but no one spoke. I could hear the whispers behind me. The murmurs of uncertainty, but I wasn't focused on them. My focus was on the truth that I had finally decided to speak. I had spent my entire life trying to fit into a mold they created for me. But now, I was shattering it. But then, somewhere along the way, I continued, I realized something. I realized that for some people, support only exists when you fit into the version of yourself they want you to be. That as long as you play the role they've written for you. Whether it's the golden child or the black sheep, they'll keep you right where they need you. I could feel the shift in the room as people began to stir. It was subtle at first, small shifts in the crowd. Uncomfortable glances exchanged, but it was enough. They were all feeling it. This was no longer a simple toast. This was a declaration that I was done. Done pretending. Done living under their thumb. If you step outside that role, I said, my voice growing quieter but no less forceful, that's when they show you how they really feel. My father shifted uncomfortably beside me. His face flushed with the tension of the moment. I could see him searching for something to say. Something to deflect. But nothing came. His silence spoke louder than any words ever could. I took a deep breath. My heart pounding. But the calm in my chest felt steady now. This was the moment. This was the time when I would stand my ground. When I would no longer be the daughter they wanted me to be, but the woman I had become. I had spent so many years trying to earn their approval. Trying to please them. Trying to be something I wasn't. But not anymore. I wasn't their disappointment. I used to think. I continued, pausing for a moment to let the weight of my words settle. That if I just proved myself. If I worked hard enough. If I was successful enough. They'd see me differently. I thought that if I played by the rules, I would finally get the approval I craved. But now I know the truth. It was never about me. It was never about what I did or didn't do. Carla's eyes narrowed, and I could see the shift in her demeanor. She was no longer smiling. She was fuming. But I didn't care. The truth was out now. There was no going back. And I get it now. I said softly. It was never about me. It was about control. It was about molding me into whatever they needed me to be. And I'm done. I met my father's gaze directly. No longer afraid of his disappointment. Because, at the end of the day, I was never supposed to succeed. Was I? For a split second, I saw it. A flicker of doubt in my father's eyes. But it was gone as quickly as it came. Replaced by his usual indifference. He wasn't going to change. Not now. Not ever. I let that silence hang in the air for a moment. The tension thick. Before exhaling sharply, rolling my shoulders back. But I did. I built something for myself. I made a life that has nothing to do with this family. And let me tell you, it's been the most peaceful, fulfilling thing I've ever done. The room was still. No one knew what to say. I could see the confusion in the faces around me. They had no idea what I was talking about. But they knew that something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed. Carla let out a breathy laugh. Trying to regain control. But I wasn't done yet. She tried to brush it off. But I wasn't going to let her. You know, I said, my voice calm. I was going to let it go. I really was. But I have to ask, whose idea was the name tag? I saw her face twitch slightly. The faintest flicker of guilt flashed in her eyes. But she quickly covered it with a dismissive laugh. Oh, come on, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You always take things so personally. It was just a joke. You need to lighten up. I nodded, my gaze unwavering. Right. Hilarious. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the looks of confusion and unease spread through the room. People were starting to realize that this wasn't just about the name tag. This was about years of pain. Years of being belittled. Years of trying to fit into a family that never truly accepted me for who I was. And now, it was all coming to light. I wasn't going to play their game anymore. Not today. Not ever again. I took one last, steadying breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep within me. Carla's forced smile had faltered completely now. Her eyes narrow with frustration. But I was done. There was no turning back. No more pretending that this family dynamic was something I could fit into. I turned my attention back to my father, watching as his face hardened, his grip on his drink tightening. His silence spoke volumes. This was the end, the last time I would stand here, in this room full of people who only saw me as a disappointment. A shadow of their perfect family. I raised my glass one final time, the silence in the room deafening. To the last time you'll ever see me, I said, my voice calm but resolute. My words lingered in the air, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was walking away from something that had weighed me down for far too long. I turned and walked toward the door, my steps slow but steady. As the room remained frozen behind me, I didn't look back. This was my choice. This was my moment of freedom. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, a wave of peace washed over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was walking away from a fight. I was walking toward the life I had built for myself. A life that was no longer defined by the expectations and judgments of a family that could never truly see me. It was over. I had cut ties. And as I drove away into the night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, knowing that I had finally chosen myself. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more content like this, make sure to like and subscribe to Life Stories for more. Don't forget to drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Did you think I went too far? Or was it long overdue?